Welcome to Wealth Matters Podcast. I have with me Avery Carl today. She is the short-term rental expert. And I don't think I can do justice to her bio, so I will let her introduce herself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, by the way.
Absolutely.
Cool. So a little bit about me. I came from the corporate world, like anybody probably that
Right.
comes on your podcast or any real estate investor ever. Corporate world was making $35,000 a year as a marketing manager in the
Wow.
music business. Yeah. And bought a long-term property first. It happened to be a really profitable one. And we had no idea what we were doing. Absolutely none. Hadn't read a
Hmm.
book, hadn't listened to a podcast. I don't know how we did that. It still happens to be our highest cash flowing long-term to date. So that was good. But, so we got that first rent check and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And it was just supposed to be like, we were going to buy one or two and sell them when our kids go to college to pay for college. But then we started listening to podcasts and reading and consuming
Right.
content about it. And we thought, oh, there's really something to this. We need to scale this, but we don't have any more money. So we scraped together another down payment, started looking around, and we thought, okay, well, how can we've got enough for one down payment now. How can we take this and make the most amount possible so that we can scale as fast as
Right.
possible? And I was living in Nashville at the time,
Okay.
and Nashville, the short-term rental regulations are kind of scary
Right.
and
It's
volatile.
yes.
Yeah, and so I thought, well, I grew up going to the Smoky Mountains. That's just about 3 hours from here. That's all you do is you rent cabins there. There's no hotels.
Okay.
And I thought, well, the regulations have to be favorable. And so we started looking there. Long story short, the first one was a total home run, scaled that into 5 short-term rentals in the Smokies within a year, and then took that, kind of paused on the short terms for another year and a half, took all that cash flow, rolled it into what is now 24 long-term doors in a different
Wow.
market.
That's a great strategy, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of think, you're doing one or the other, you're either an
Right.
Airbnb person or you're a long-term person, but
Yeah.
what
You
we've
can
done
do
is,
both.
yeah, absolutely. And, the long terms really are the tried and true way to do it.
Uh-huh.
And so what we've done is taken the Airbnb model and just making sure we're doing that in markets that are dependent on short-term rentals and have been for decades. So true vacation rental markets, you would call them. So the other market that I own in is the Destin, Florida market.
Oh, that's a
Um,
great market too. Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually sitting here right now in
Oh,
Destin,
okay.
I've rehabbed one and it's just getting finished up. So we're here, finishing it up. So we choose markets that are super dependent on that, not a lot of hotel presence. And
Yes.
because of that, the regulations are very, very favorable to short-term rental investors because the local municipalities are just so dependent on them. So it's just a lot safer than doing it in a metro market. I know a lot of people can make a lot of money doing the metro market thing, but you just don't run into the regulation issues.
Right.
And your occupancy is a lot more consistent. There's a lot more documented data on that than the metro markets, where it's
Correct.
kind of the new strategy as of the past 10 years.
Correct. And
Yeah.
it's a great point as well. So it's one is in the metro market is the competition, right? Because you are going to have hotels and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
unless you are hosting a Super Bowl or some kind of game, you are not going to have, crazy home runs, right?
Right.
Second is the regulations, of course. And third, I think is the problem with, the kind of pool you are going to attract, right? Because you don't know. And like recently, I saw there was a block party here in San Francisco Bay Area, and a lot of people. Yeah, there was a lot of issues actually, right? So in metro and maybe in other markets too, you may see that, but in metro markets, you'll definitely see those kind of
Oh yeah.
issues, right?
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of clients that own in multiple markets that, they will have bought. So I have real estate offices. I'm an agent in the Smoky Mountains and then in Destin, Florida, and then also in the Gulf Shores, Alabama area. And I have a lot of clients who also own in metro areas, and I have a lot of people who own in Nashville and the bachelorette parties and the puking. And
exactly.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
that
mess.
that one incident will wipe all of your gains for that year, and I have
Yeah.
learned from all that. But a couple of things which stood out for me is that even at that income, you took action, right? So it seems you are an action taker like me, where I did not need an education. I just wanted to learn by doing things. And then once I realized that this could work, that's when I went ahead and listened to the podcast, took courses and whatnot. So I like people who take actions.
Cool.
So today I want to discuss about, because I view you as one of the short-term experts, and it's pretty interesting because you just mentioned you are based out of Nashville now. Still Nashville?
Not Nashville anymore. I am mostly in the Smoky Mountains, and then I've also got a house here in Destin that I don't rent. So I'm kind of bouncing between those two offices, but mostly in the Smokies at the moment.
Got it. Uh, but so how do you manage these properties remotely? Because I think when you started, you were in Nashville and you were managing them,
Right.
and then you moved to Smoky Mountains area. So can you talk about what are some of the things you want to have in order if you want to, if you are someone like me, like most of these investors are in metro areas, right?
Right.
And they will be, buying properties out of state, and especially I don't own anything in California because it's too expensive as well as unaffordable. So all my properties are in Alabama, Georgia area, and I have property manager who does most of the work. But how does it work in short-term rental space?
Oh
How do
yeah,
you manage
absolutely.
them?
So it's actually pretty easy. And even though I live within like 30 miles of my properties in the Smokies, I basically manage them remotely. I think I've seen one of them in the past 2 years in
Really? Oh,
person.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really just a few automation tools and getting a network set up on the ground because property managers, it's 2020. You don't need somebody to do you don't need to pay somebody 20 to 40%, which it can be, 40 can be the standard in these markets, to do something that you can do from your phone in the hot tub or, drinking a beer. It's like,
Right.
It's just not necessary to give them that much of your cash flow anymore. So really all it is downloading the booking platform apps on your phone that you're going to be using. Right. We use YourPorter. It's a channel manager. For those who don't know, channel managers are technology that has come out since Airbnb to kind of help you manage all of the platforms that you might have your property listed on. So Airbnb, VRBO, booking.com, and different ones do different things and are more compatible with different ones. But we use YourPorter.
So sorry to interrupt.
Sure,
So
yeah.
just to make it easier for my listeners to understand. So YourPorter is like a portal which can manage bookings on all other websites like VRBO, Airbnb, etc. Right? So you just go in one place and all the calendar, etc. could be managed from one place.
Right. It brings it all to one portal and one dashboard. And it also does a lot of cool automation stuff. So part of making sure that your listings are in the top of the algorithm, come up at the top of the searches, is your responsiveness. And a lot of times, you're driving or something and you get an inquiry and you can't respond. So these channel managers, they'll respond for you. And we have automatic responses to a number of just the FAQs that people ask. So when people request a book, it says, "Oh, hey, it's Avery and Luke. Nice to meet you. Thanks for checking out our property." It automatically sends them their check-in instructions 2 days before check-in, door code, directions, restaurants and stuff that are around the grocery delivery number, anything that they might want to know prior to check-in. So
it's an autoresponder, and then it can work with Airbnb or VRBO, any platform. So you do not need to open Airbnb app or VRBO app and respond to those.
Right. If they ask you something very specific, like, "Hey, where's your crock pot?" then you do need to just respond on your phone, but it answers almost everything for you.
Okay. Got it. So that's the start, right? What about, you mentioned network, right? So who should be in your network to, remotely manage the short-term rentals?
Your cleaner and your handy person are the main two, and then you build out from there. Your cleaner is like gold, and they should be treated as
Right.
such.
Very, very important.
Yes. They are, they're going to be the people that tell you
Right.
if something's broken
Yeah.
or if something is out of place or your towels are getting a little bit ratty and
Right.
time to change it. They'll keep you from getting bad reviews. So what I do as an agent, what my team does is we get all of our clients set up with all of those people so that they can just run these things by themselves without having to pay a manager. If you're buying, wherever you're buying in a market, you just need to make sure that you have an agent who either owns these Airbnbs and short-term rentals themselves and can kind of help you through the process, or at least has a really good network and is willing to give you some referrals. Because, a lot of times these cleaners and handy people, they're not, they don't have websites. They're not doing SEO
Right.
so that you can find them. So having just a good network on the ground is really critical. And you should have an agent. You should be able to find an agent who can do that for you.
Got it. And what about, so yes, cleaners are the most important, because when I check into my Airbnb and if it's not clean, that's a huge problem. So cleaners and handyman, of course. What about, you need to have contractors? Any connections with city or anything? If you want to find out what's going on with regulation or anything else, do you need to, or property inspector, etc.?
So your agent should be able to help you with that. I know we give a list of just, 4 or 5 different of each vendor, like 4 or 5 different inspectors you can choose from, 4 or 5 different contractors you can contact to see who works best. The city, in most cases, you can just call the city codes department to check on things. That's usually pretty easy to find just with a quick Google search in any city. Just to make sure that you're doing the right thing in terms of permitting processes, if there are any. Sometimes there aren't. Most of the time there are now, though. And just, making sure that you have all your ducks in a row that way, especially getting set up with your occupancy taxes and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. So, and let's just talk about those markets, Destin and Florida and Gatlinburg, right? Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, if I'm right. I haven't been to Smokies, but now this will push me to go there, right?
Yeah.
So those markets, how does the property insurance work for short-term rentals?
There are several options several routes you can go. So, and it all just depends on what your comfort level is. You want to make sure that you're talking to your insurance person and just making sure that you're making the right decisions for you. But there are several short-term rental specific insurance companies. Proper is the most famous one. They're also the most expensive by far.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bad. But they're very comprehensive. So, it's a give and take there. CBiz is another one. Foremost is another one. All of those are short-term rental specific companies. Or what we've done is we have a commercial umbrella policy for all of ours. And we found, we read through, and the only difference between our commercial policy and the short-term rental specific companies that we could find in our specific one, it's not going to be like this every time, people who are listening. The only difference was ours doesn't cover theft. But if somebody is going to steal my $500 TV, I'm not going to file an insurance claim. And this never happened.
Yeah. And so, there'll be another deductible of 500.
Yeah. So we're, and we've never had anything stolen. And to be honest with you, we've never had anyone across 6 properties now in 4 or 5 years, never had anybody break anything really even. And, people accidentally knock stuff off. Yeah. But, we haven't had anybody trash anything too badly. And I think, you haven't asked this question yet, but that's kind of our strategy up front is we ask guests a lot of questions and we don't book everyone who wants to book. A lot of people think you just have to take all the bookings that you can get. And we actively try to not book people because you can tell by the questions somebody's asking up front if they're going to be a pain, if they're going to be somebody who's going to leave you a bad review, like, because they moved the refrigerator and there was dust underneath it kind of thing. So you just want to ask some screening questions up front to make sure that you're avoiding potential bad things happening, while they're staying.
That's a great point. And I was going there actually. I'm glad that you brought it up, that because when you're remotely managing, how do you weed out the problem,
It's just with questions. Right? Yeah. Like if somebody, you can tell by the kind of questions that they ask. Like if they ask you 4 or 5 things that are clearly, near the top of the
Okay.
listing, they're probably going to be somebody who's, they're not reading, they're not listening.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be somebody who's going to not understand a rule or something like that. So we just, you can tell by somebody's vibe, and a lot of times they will give themselves away. They'll say, "Hey, we're coming for a bachelorette party. We're so excited.
Right.
And we're all 21. Yay." And then you're like, decline.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't ever want to actually hit the decline button. You want to tell them, "Oh, I don't think you'll be comfortable." So they decline you to keep
I
you up
see.
high in the algorithm.
That's another great point. So let's say for those markets, another thing I wanted to talk about is how does the licensing work? Do you need a business license in Gatlinburg, Destin, or you can just operate as on your name or sole proprietor? How do you have to file?
So you do have to get a business license to make sure that you are paying your local occupancy taxes. In the Smokies, you just call Jana at the city and say, "Hey, I need a business license," and they send it to you, and it's no big deal.
Oh, okay.
Here in Destin, you call Miss Shannon at the city, and they have a much more detailed process. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get through all of it because you have to get 2 or 3 different licenses, and they don't really ever decline people. It's just a lot more hoops to jump through. Whereas in Gatlinburg, it's like, "Oh, here you go."
Got it. Okay. No, and so, do you own them under LLC or how do you do it? And if someone is starting out, do you recommend them to own under LLC or just get it on your own name?
So that's a really great question that there are a lot of answers to. So
Right.
obviously you want to talk to your CPA and your attorney.
An attorney. Yep.
I am neither. But what we've done, so with the vacation rentals, another way that you can get into them without having a ton of money is you can do what's called a 10% down vacation home loan.
Yes.
And that is a conventional Fannie Freddie loan, which means that it has to be an individual person's name on it. They can't lend to an LLC. So if you're going to do it that way, you do have to put it in your own name.
Right.
And you just want to make sure that you're overinsured at that point.
Uh-huh.
Down the line from that, maybe you do want to convert to LLCs. You don't want to get into any of the situations with converting to an LLC and quit claiming, and then they can call your loan due, which they can. But down the road, if you have children, and I just went through this, my husband and I just went through this like estate planning thing, and our attorney told us this, and we didn't know. If we die and we have all of these houses in
our own
names,
then
she has to sell them.
Yeah,
she has to sell them. So we are going to at some point get
put them
everything
in
over
the trust.
To LLCs. Yeah. So that's something that a lot of times they don't. When people have that discussion about real estate investing, they don't talk about that piece. They're just like, "Oh, this will happen," or it's good for your taxes, or it's not good for your taxes, but they don't ever talk about that probate.
Yeah, I went through this 3 years ago because California is even notorious on the probate side. Yeah, it takes like 2 to 3 years, and the attorney fees can cost arm and a leg, right?
Right.
And the reason I asked about LLC, I don't want to go in that direction, but when you mentioned commercial umbrella, so how do you get commercial umbrella insurance without having a business or some kind of entity? Are you able to combine all of your properties in one entity, or how were you able to get a commercial umbrella policy?
So for us, and I don't know, I just have one insurance company who does all of my stuff, and so they just gave it to us. We don't have, like, we've only got 1 or 2 of our properties in an LLC or a trust right now. And they just have given us the commercials when we ask. So they just haven't asked any questions on that, and neither have we.
Got it.
To be very honest.
That's awesome. So managing remotely, and because I was personally looking at this as well in January, by the way, as I was mentioning before the call, that I would have pulled the trigger either on an Orlando property or a Gatlinburg property. I was looking at both, and then Orlando almost it was done, and I backed out somehow. I don't know why, and I think it's a great thing now. I may be able to get better deals. But when I was looking at those properties, I was also looking into, of course, managing remotely, because I reached out to a lot of property managers and they were all about 20%, right? And long-term rental, I'm used to paying 10%, but in that they are doing, I'm not comparing, but they are doing, finding a long-term tenant. So they are doing a lot of work upfront, and you have a lot of management which goes in day to day. In short-term rental, it's different. You have more cleaning and handyman stuff, right? So, and then when I start looking to 20%, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna make much if I'm paying 20%. So I looked into remotely managing. And how do you manage, like, locks and all? Do you have that Wi-Fi locks, etc.? Like, do you have Nest thermostat? How do you do all of those?
Right. So we don't use the actual Nest brand because they're kind of difficult with having multiple properties in the app, but we use the Honeywell version of the Nest.
Yeah, I like the Honeywell too. Yeah, those are good.
And we have the keypad locks, and a lot of people do the Ring doorbell cameras.
Yes, I was going there.
Yeah, those are good to have, but you have to be careful not to be obsessed with them. Like, I have some clients that are constantly watching their cameras, and there's certain things that if you don't know, they're not hurting you. And I'm not saying that it's okay if guests are breaking the rules, but if it's not something that affected the property, but that you wouldn't have known once they checked out, had you not been watching, but you made a really big deal because you were watching these people, and then you're messaging them saying you're not allowed to do blah, 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 then you've created a huge problem for yourself that's going to get you a bad review, because you wouldn't just, be cool and let them be on vacation. Right. They're going to smoke weed on the porch. That's what people, they're going to, that's the phrase that I use. They're on vacation.
I know.
They're not going to be on their best
they are on
behavior.
vacation. Yeah.
So, you got to be careful with the cameras.
Right. And of course, you can't install cameras inside the house, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's just only the front, garage, outside of the garage, etc.
Right.
So, and the lock as well, you are able to remotely change the keys every time. So can you walk me through the process, how it works when someone reaches out to you on Airbnb? What do you do? Like, what checklist you do? And then once you confirm them, what happens?
Sure. So they'll reach out. Our YourPorter will say, "Hey, it's Luke and Avery. Thanks so much for your inquiry." If there was a specific question in there, then we'll answer it. And so they book, we confirm them, and then they'll get a little message that says you'll get your door code and everything you need 48 hours prior to check-in. Let us know if you have a question between now and then. And then 48 hours prior to check-in, everything's a template.
Okay.
The template sends to them with the directions to get to the house and the address. Right. You don't want to give them the address more than 2 days in advance, or the door code.
Yeah.
So we give them all that 2 days in advance. We say, here's the grocery stores that deliver here. Here's their websites. Here's, if you need firewood, go here, those kinds of things. It's all in the template. Everything's canned. And, hopefully they don't have too many questions. And then, they show up, they check in, we can see that they checked in, and, they stay. We have an auto message that sends to them 2 days in that says, "Hey, how's it going? Let us know if you need anything. Here's our favorite hike. Go do this." And then the day they check out, or the day before they check out, they get checkout instructions, run the dishwasher, just leave the beds the way they are, put the trash in the bear-proof trash cans, and, leave us a 5-star review. We already left you a 5-star review. We have an auto reviewer that goes ahead and reviews the guests. Okay. I found they're more apt to give you a 5-star review if you tell them first, "Oh, left you a 5-star review. Hope to do the same." They kind of feel like make them feel like you owe them something, or they owe you something in a very small way.
It happened to me as well, so I know how that works. So that's great. So once all of this has happened, right? How do you communicate with them throughout, as you said, after 2 days, or have you seen, actually, let me rephrase the question. Any nightmare scenarios have you seen? Like, let's say you send the address and the lock code 2 days before 48 hours and someone showed up, or there are any other things someone like me should keep in mind?
Yeah. So something to keep in mind about the communication is we found that people respond a lot better and they're a lot less annoying if you communicate as little as possible. And when you do, just act like you're a robot, like you're a computer, like they're talking to someone at a call center. Because as soon as you kind of personalize things, because everybody wants to make their Airbnb personal and blah, blah, and nobody cares.
Right.
But if you kind of come across like a computer, then they're like, okay, these are the instructions. And they're not like, oh, hey, we need more toilet paper. Can you bring toilet paper? Because no, we're not going to bring toilet paper. But you want to make sure that they can only communicate with you on the messenger on the platform, because that way, if anything goes sideways, then
Yes.
an Airbnb or VRBO has to get involved.
You
They
have
can
proof.
see it.
Yeah.
And really, that's it. Just be a computer is my my best advice.
So automate as much as possible. And then have you set up automation on the cleaning and handyman side as well, so that if someone come, as soon as once the booking is done, cleaners get notification of, automatically, and you don't have to get involved?
Right. So there are some platforms that will do that. Turnover B&B is one. My particular cleaner, we just use a regular Google Calendar. It syncs with everything in YourPorter, all the calendars in there. And she gets a notification as soon as somebody books, so she can take a look at her calendar for the week and say, oh, I have to be at this one, on these days. I have actually, back to your question about horror stories, before we had all these systems and we were just doing this manually, we have more than once sent someone the directions and door code to the wrong cabin, to one of our other cabins. It's happened twice.
Yeah. Which makes sense, right? When you don't have, so sometimes you have to look at it that way. When you don't have automation and you're doing this manually and you have 20 cabins to manage and you have 20 windows open, you are going to make mistakes, right? That's the power of automation. This was great. So let's take a quick break. And after the break, I want to talk about, impact of COVID-19.
Sure.
Welcome back to Wealth Matters Podcast. I'm chatting with Avery Carl about how to manage short-term rentals remotely. We are going to discuss about, and this is what I have been asking almost every guest, because we are going through this coronavirus pandemic. So I want to ask her, what do you see would be the impact of, or if you have seen any impact of COVID-19 on real estate and especially short-term rentals or Airbnb? Because I know Airbnb and hotels, pretty much entertainment or hospitality industry got hammered. So what do you see, or what have you seen?
Awesome. So this was definitely a worst case scenario, but we have a lot of information now about what worst case scenarios look like. So in both of my markets, so Smokies and Destin, obviously right at the beginning when they started putting everybody in lockdown and saying, okay, you're not leaving your house kind of thing. That was, I guess, the beginning of March. March and April sucked. No bones about it. Not going to lie about that. That is a really good thing to talk about, cash reserves, which is a topic big enough for another podcast. So I won't get into why it's important to have that, but everyone should. In both markets, so our books got wiped clean in the beginning of March. And then after about a week, we started getting a trickling in of bookings in the Smokies of people who live in areas that are drivable to the Smokies, but like Atlanta, but they live in a small apartment or a small condo. And they are like, okay, well, if we're going to social distance, we're going to have to be doing this for a month. We want to come do this somewhere else. So we got just enough of those kinds of bookings in the Smokies to break even. We broke even for the worst 2 months of COVID, nothing out of pocket. If it had gone on longer, we would have had to dip into the cash reserves. But for those 2 months, because we still had custom cabinets scheduled to be put in because it was a rehab, but it was ready to be rented. But we got a $6,000 booking for the whole month. We didn't end up taking it, but we would have done much better than break even in Destin had we been able to take that. But we were like, we need to get the cabinets in. So now what we've been seeing in both markets is in the past 4 weeks, as there started to be a light at the end of the tunnel, things are opening back up. People are kind of, just getting sick of being in the house and taking
Right.
advantage of things opening back up. We've seen some of the highest prices per night we've ever had, more than
Oh,
Christmas,
wow.
more than a lot of the holidays. So I kind of hypothesized during this that the regional drivable vacation rental markets were going to have a big boom because people are going to be dying to get out of their house, but they
Yes.
still don't want to get on planes and be in airports. They don't want to go to big metro areas. So like
Right.
Orlando, for example, you're cooped up, you go there to go to
That's,
Disney.
yeah, that's hammered. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no,
So I ended up being correct in that. People are driving. They're sick of being in their houses. They're driving on vacation. And our calendars are booming. Obviously on the sales side, it kind of stopped for
right.
that March, April. But, I think my team's gotten 25 contracts in the past 3 weeks. So everything has come right back. I know a lot of people were waiting for the bottom to drop out of the real estate market, but it just didn't last long enough for that to
Right.
happen. Now that the bookings are back, the sellers aren't really giving any discounts. They don't have to, just like they
Yeah.
didn't before. So we didn't see a big drop in pricing. We did see a little bit of a dip. It's kind of on its way back up. I think it's going to plateau, but nothing major. I don't think we're going to see a lot of really cheap, almost foreclosed upon distressed properties in the vacation rental markets, at least coming on in Q3 and Q4. I think we had a little dip, assuming there's not going to be another major outbreak and more lockdowns. I think we're kind of going to be back to normal very soon.
That's great. And I think it may have to do with the markets too, because some markets, as you mentioned, Orlando, maybe Los Angeles, they will see bigger dip than, other
Yes.
markets where you have an open area like Smoky, you can hike, right? Destin,
Right.
you can go to beach. But if you are just going to go to Disney or Hollywood, right, that's not going to work, right?
Right.
So no, that's awesome. Would you be changing any business or investment strategy after the pandemic?
So the only thing I'm kind of waiting on is it's time for me to graduate into some bigger multifamilies. And I know with the pretty much halting of multifamily commercial loans for the past few months, and they're still not
Yes.
available. I mean, I'm sure some listeners are going to say, yes, it is. I use this one. I would love to know. Please tell me.
No,
Send that
it's
to me.
hard. I've been
But
waiting for last 2 months. I'll tell you about it.
yeah. I think there's going to be some
That's
opportunity there in
yes.
Q4 maybe. But at least in my vacation rental markets, I think we're kind of the bottom of the market was at the height of the uncertainty, which was about a month ago. But I think that the multifamily is going to be some opportunity at the end of the year.
Awesome. Any favorite real estate or finance or any other personal development book?
I really like everything by Ryan Holiday. So The Obstacle is the Way is my favorite, just because it's really easy in real estate, especially being an agent when you're dealing with a lot of people who are, they're putting down a really big deposit. It's a really big investment for them, a lot of emotions. A lot of times they can be a little emotional, and it can be tough for me because, I want them to be happy and
Right.
things like that. So, just dealing with a lot of people that have a lot of money on the line and are emotional. That book is really good because it kind of helps you just be like, okay, there's nothing I can do about how everyone's feeling. I can just execute X, Y, and Z and kind of get through it. So
Okay.
anything Ryan Holiday, I love.
I got to check it out then. How
Yeah.
do you give back?
How do I give back? I haven't been giving back much lately, I'll be honest. There is a charity that I really love called Girls Rock. I, in another life, toured in bands and played music, and it's a summer camp kind of thing, like a day camp, but they have year-round after-school programs too. That's about empowering young girls through music, through learning how to play instruments, and just building confidence. And there's another one called Girls Run that are not affiliated. I'm a big runner also. And
Oh,
it's,
okay.
running with girls after school, just as a way to, get them into something and in shape and, working towards something and just, teaching them to have goals and build confidence too.
That's awesome. How can my listeners reach out to you?
They can find me at theshorttermshop.com. My number's right on there. They can schedule a call with me, shoot me an email. Everything's right there.
Thank you so much, Avery. I had fun chatting with you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.